So what do you think makes something a tale of our time?
A tale of our time is something that can be built upon by media that comes after it. It inspires others to make media in the same vein, rework and remaster what has been done before.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so interesting, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle movies, books, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and joining me today is my guest and good friend, Cody Gates. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And now Cody and I first met online because you write scenarios, campaigns for D&D.
Yeah, correct. I've published a few adventures on the DMs Guild, self-published. I'm not a professional, so any advice I give, take with a grain of salt, please.
I feel like if you do publish, it is somewhat professional. You know, I think that's a big step to take. It's very impressive to me.
Well, it did reach copper medal on the DMs Guild, so at least 50 people have bought it. And
yeah.
Whether everyone's played it or not, I don't know.
Well, I certainly enjoyed playing it. It was very fun. And Cody is in town visiting Taiwan for the very first time.
Correct.
So we're so glad to have you here. But, you know, I can introduce you all you want. Is there anything you would like to say to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Australia, which has been introduced already. I'm from Perth, if anyone's familiar with that city on the west coast. And I am a city planner, so cities have always played an important part of my life when I've encountered stories and narratives.
Well, you know, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Setting is one of the key elements of telling any story, right? So where you choose to place that story, every city, every place has its own character.
Yeah, absolutely. I consider cities, at least in my own creative works, to be a character in themselves. So while someone might create a world map and give some names and things like that, you can do that on the smaller scale for your city as well.
Yeah.
And put some meaning into it and make them a place rather than just a name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's certainly at play in the story that we're talking about today. Today, you wanted to discuss the 1982 Blade Runner. But directed by Ridley Scott, based off of that infamously quotable named book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So I'm really excited to talk about this story because I love the cyberpunk genre, and that this has been such a huge influence on that.
It's definitely had a influence on me as a creative, and just the thing that I remember the most from it is definitely the cityscape, which I think is something most people take away from that film, with the iconic introduction of flying in over 2024 LA or something. So it's I think we've passed the time that movie was set in. So
in the future past.
I'm still waiting for my flying car.
The setting is so visually arresting for this movie. I think you're right that's one of the standout things that has definitely almost been copy pasted onto everything else that followed this through almost creating the genre. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you look at, even if you go to the anime Ghost in the Shell,
I love
the city in that is also sort of got that future noir based on those fusions of the old Asian style of Hong Kong and New York. Felt lived in when you could see the city yourself. I could imagine myself in that city, as imperfect as it was and crowded as it was. Is that this is something I could definitely be in.
Okay, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Cody, for people like me who maybe haven't seen the movie Blade Runner, do you think you could give us a summary of what happens?
The summary is a detective is hired to hunt down some what they call replicants in the story, which are sort of bioengineered humans that we use to do labor work on off the planet on Mars somewhere. And
So
they've
these are like
escaped.
essentially the like androids of this world, but they're replicants here.
Yeah, so they are androids, but they're not cybernetic, if that makes sense. They're not like robots inside. They're sort of like grown in vats, I think, rather than put together with
super important
humans.
difference. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it. So these replicants are made to do work.
Yeah.
And the detective has to go hunt down a rogue one.
Yeah, so this group of rogue replicants, so they're faster and stronger than humans. They can work longer, but they've escaped their, slavery essentially and come to Earth. And it's Harrison Ford's character's job, his name is Deckard, to go and hunt down these 3 replicants that have escaped into the city.
Okay. So how does that go?
During the journey, where he gets introduced by the Tyrell Corporation, is the company that makes these replicants. He gets introduced to a replicant that works at the Tyrell Corporation, and the twist is that replicant doesn't know they're a replicant. They think they're a human.
Does Deckard know that it's a replicant?
Yes. And he falls in love with the replicant.
Oh, of course. Of course. You have to have a romantic subplot. Okay.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't join his hunt, but then he sort of starts questioning himself, what if they don't know they're a replicant, are they human? I think, therefore I am. It's the classic line that one of them says about being a replicant and then being human. What is your soul?
So this replicant that he falls in love with, do you know her name?
Rachel, I want to say.
Rachel. Okay. So we'll call her Rachel. So he meets Rachel. Does he do this before he finds the other 3 rogue replicants?
Yes. So he meets her before he finds them all. And then...
So he's going into this hunt after this then, kind of much more morally ambiguous on am I hunting replicants? Am I hunting people? Or what's the difference between that?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's a whole aging thing, the replicants age faster than humans because I think the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long, so they have a limited lifespan.
Oh, okay. So wait, they're older than he thought.
He does detective work. That's all I can say. He does detective work, which takes you through the streets of the city that they're in, which is future LA. So you get that real juxtaposition between the flyover at the start where you see all the skyscrapers and the monolith Tyrell Corporation building background. And then you go to street level where Deckard is going through the streets trying to find these replicants by questioning people, getting clues.
Okay.
And,
so it's a very, in this way, then it's a very, kind of open and closed noir detective story.
Absolutely.
In the way that he finds them.
Yeah, it's one of those, it is a stereotypical, what's the word I'm looking for?
Gumshoe detective story.
Yeah, it borrows a lot from the 1950s and 60s noir.
Yeah. I used to read those penny books basically. That's man goes out, he questions this guy, he's kind of shady, then he questions this lady, and then he questions a third person, and that gives him all the clues he needs to find them in the third spot where they are.
And even the filming style follows that noir films from the 50s and 60s, which gives it the dark and light, the turning fans.
Yeah.
Blocking the light
fun.
back and forth. Yeah. So
then at the end of it, after he finds them, what does he do? Does he arrest them? Do they
I
die?
believe it is a kill on sight job.
Oh my God.
So
he takes
two
them
of
out.
them he kills.
So then
the third one dies from old age. So that's Roy Batty. He was the last rep, which is played by
And
Rutger
he's the one
Hauer, and it is an amazing performance.
Yeah.
If anyone's seen it. There's a speech about what the replicants have witnessed, and it's all just lost like tears in rain.
I know the tears
in
the
rain.
Some
tears in rain.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, before that, they had a fight on a building, and Deckard was pushed over the edge of the building, and is gripping on the side
edge
of the building.
Yeah.
And then just as he's about to fall off, Batty grabs his hand and lifts him up over and saves him.
His life.
Yeah.
So then in exchange, Deckard leaves him.
Yeah, he dies peacefully. He passes away from old age straight after he rescues.
Yeah, burning
Deckard.
bright, right? So
there is a little bit more where he has to now hunt Rachel because she has realized she is a replicant and has run away from the company. However, they're
He's
lovers.
in love with her. Yeah.
And depending on which version you watch, for those out there, there's 7 different versions of this film.
What?
In the original one, which is easy to tell from the voiceover, there's a voiceover narrative which sort of treats the audience like they're idiots.
Yeah.
They run away together and, live happily ever after.
And we never see it happen. It's just told to us.
Yeah, I think it's literally a shot of a road, traveling along a road. And there's like a voiceover saying something about we traveled somewhere and lived happily ever after.
And we got a house in Cabo and we never went back. Something like this. Yeah. What the other ending?
The other ending is Deckard has dreams, which are shown in the film of a unicorn going through a field or something like that. And at the end, he has it's not really a partner, but like a other detective who's working on the same story. And at the end, Deckard goes to leave with Rachel, I think, and his partner has left him a little origami unicorn.
Oh.
So the theory is Deckard a replicant? Mm-hmm. Rachel believes she's human because she has memories.
Replicants don't have memories.
Replicants don't have memories. So those memories had been, as he's told by Tyrell, that memories are implanted.
Oh.
So that's why the unicorn at the end of the director's cut is like, okay, Deckard's memories could be implanted.
Yeah, these could be not real.
And that's how his partner knows about the dreams of unicorns.
Oh, and so this has also got to be why, like, that whole speech at the end where he's like, these are all the things I've seen and I've known. It's like the double meaning of like, well, do you remember these things? How are any of them implanted? Are these all after you escaped? Like, we don't know. Okay. I love stories like this. It's kind of the Inception treatment.
Yeah, it leaves that sort of ambiguous ending.
I love that.
Which people seem to like a lot more than the original.
Well, I'm sure most people like an ending that's not like, and listen up here, stupid babies, this is what's going to happen next, and that's the end. I am not a fan of being told how to understand a story either. The other one was studio driven. Yeah, profit driven. Yeah. We don't trust people to be smart.
And it didn't do well.
Yeah. Well, that's
but now it is a cult classic.
Yeah.
And has basically driven the cyberpunk genre forward since it was released.
You know what is crazy is as you were telling me this, I think at the beginning I said I don't know if I've read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I think I have, because as you were telling me this, I was remembering things from the story that inspired this is by an author called Philip K. Dick. For anyone out there, if you like perspective fiction about the future, usually like depressing in some way or another, you should definitely check out his stories. They're all very short, and they all kind of hit this tone of a future that isn't so great, but will make you think about the nature of humanity. But okay, I'm gonna try to stay focused. So, moving on from here, what makes this story so meaningful to you? Like, how did this story really impact you?
Well, for me, I really think it sort of impacted my love of cyberpunk sort of aesthetics. And I mean, I lived in Australia, so the cities in Australia, if anyone's familiar with Perth, it's not very dense. There's not very high rises.
Very spread out.
And it's suburbia mostly.
Yeah.
So seeing that sort of scale of city, like, and having no concept of what the outside world is like, because I haven't traveled. The idea of this sort of dense city. I mean, when I was originally watching it, I had no idea. Hong Kong, New York existed.
Yeah. They're just names on a page.
They're just names. Yeah. Exactly. They're not places to me yet. Maybe that's why I became a city planner. I don't know.
Really? Oh, okay. Well, because also, like we were just talking about, the city plays kind of its own role. But as somebody who chose to be a city planner, and also you write your own games, do you feel like there's any influence from the role that the city plays in Blade Runner in your own life and in your own writing?
Interesting question. The city obviously plays a huge part in everyone's lives. I mean, it might have driven my desire to be involved in creating those sorts of spaces for people, and hence getting into city and planning and urban design. One of the most memorable scenes I have is when he just goes up to a noodle stand and like orders noodles from like a street stand. Those didn't exist. They still don't exist in Australia. So that concept was foreign to me. Like, that's so cool. You can just walk up and order food from some guy in the street. Again, not realizing that Hong Kong New York.
Places like this exist.
Places like this exist.
Yeah.
So it's sort of given me that. I mean, the other thing about that city is it's always dark. And so when you watch that movie when you're
of cyberpunk movies.
Yeah, so watching that movie when you're a brooding teenager, you're like, yes.
Fits,
I
feels
love
right.
this place.
Yeah. The neon lights, darkness, the rain. This is who I am.
This is what I think. So it probably really set up my geeky absorption of all things sort of cyberpunk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And AI now, I suppose, is the bigger driver.
Well, I mean, kind of also predicted a little bit by these kind of movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But maybe, let's widen the scope then. What do you think makes Blade Runner a tale of our time? Or another way to ask that would be like, what meaning do you think other people could find in this movie? Or perhaps have found?
Apart from a deep existential crisis.
This is all of Philip K. Dick's work. Philip K. D.
Yeah.
Like, this is what he does.
Yeah.
It's not his, I guess. This is Ridley Scott.
Yeah. Apart from existential crisis. I mean, like I said, it's based on noir tale. So the tale itself is not new. It's
like
sort
the
of
format of it.
But the format of it. So again, it's building on things that have come before. And remixing and remastering them to make them something new and original, which, I mean, as someone young when they experienced it, I didn't understand the nuance of even of that sort of creative process.
Yeah, of course.
So going from book, then using the noir influence of filmmaking to turn that book into a visual media. Blade Runner didn't just create the cyberpunk. Well, I don't think it did create. Everyone says Neuromancer created the cyberpunk genre. But then taking things that exist and blending them into something this culturally significant, I think has left a mark on me creatively.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of like an inspirational focus. Like you can see the effects really clearly of all of these other bits and pieces in Blade Runner and kind of like inspire you to build something off of the shoulders of this giant, perhaps we could say.
Yeah, so I guess the thing some people might take away from it is you don't have to be completely original.
That's true. And you know what? That
create
is
a great
true.
Narrative story.
Yeah. I want to diverge one more time, since you did just mention like AI while we were like casually rattling things off. Do you think like examining the nature of humanity or what we perceive to be humanity to be like a good part of the discussion to keep entering into our like social zeitgeist?
Social zeitgeist around AI.
I don't know. I can't think of any one thing to fit.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tale that's older than AI as fiction sci-fi writers.
And one of the very first things you told me was like, these are not androids. Like, that was my first assumption. And it was like, no, these are like much more human. So in kind of like thinking about implanted memories or like examining what difference those made, I think one could draw a similarity to like an artificially generated intelligence, artificially generated memory. Yeah,
but not only that, it maybe also creates an examination of fear of the different. But, that's an examination for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I can say, AI is definitely not human. It has not a creative bone in its little digital body.
It's not original. So
it's not original.
Nothing there is original.
But having said that, after saying Blade Runner took things that came before and blended them into something new, people might argue, AI does that. It does not. It does not understand what it's doing. Whereas the creative process is...
Yeah.
You understand what you're taking
Perhaps
and doing.
It's the intentionality behind it that matters most, right? Okay, so we're almost out of time. The last thing I want to ask you before we go is if you could give Blade Runner 1982 a subtitle of your own, what would that be?
Blade Runner. These are not the androids you're looking for.
That does kind of work because they're not the androids.
Yeah, these are not the androids you're looking for.
Yeah,
these are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, these are not the droids, capitalized droids. Not the droids
these are
you're
not the
looking
droids
for.
you're looking for because they might be human or they consider themselves human.
Let's
go with that.
Fun.
I'll stick with that
People
one.
People will have to listen to know. They'll have to know to know. Well, thank you, Cody, for coming on my show. I've so appreciated talking to you today.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And for everyone out there, thank you for listening. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I've been Amanda Stevens with my guest, Cody Gates. And we were discussing the 1982 Blade Runner. These are not the droids you're looking for. A tale of our time. We'll see you next time.